Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here, coming at you from the Knife Center, and it's our favorite time of the week because we're taking a look at the coolest new knives that have just hit our shelves just in time for the holidays. Let's get into it. All right, first up, we've got a lot of knives on the table, so I'm going to try to hit all the high points without belaboring things too much this time. It's kind of what I do though. First up, a couple of exclusives to announce. The first of which is this Spyderco Lil Native in our established combination of smooth black G10 handles and a CruWear blade. Very cool little device right here. Yeah, we'll call it a device, why not? Even better than the nice blade steel that you've got here, which is going to be tougher than the S30V that the standard versions come with, while still having nice high edge retention, is the price. Less expensive even than the S30V versions. Right now, $126 for this knife. Made in the USA, upgraded materials, awesome design to back it all up. Blade length is at that 2.5 inch mark, so this is a good length for folks who might have some more severe restrictions placed on the blade length you're allowed to carry, and yet it still feels like a substantial knife. Thanks to that broad finger choil there, which admittedly does take up some of the usable edge. As a trade-off, you're able to get all 4 fingers on that knife handle. Most people will be able to, at least. My hands are slightly larger than average, and as you can see, I've got a full-on gorilla grip on this small knife. Lets you put that blade to use, lets you push it a little harder than a daintier knife might feel like you would be able to. That's not quite a sentence, I think. Petered out near the end, but it's okay. As for the carry in the pocket, we have a folded over wire clip, which is reversible. Nice subtle looking when it is clipped into your pants. And we have Spyderco's compression lock that allows you to do the wrist flick, open and closed. It's finger safe, so you don't have to worry about your fingers crossing the path of that sharp edge whatsoever. And it is right hand biased, but it is still usable with the left hand at least so. But it's a very cool knife right now. Well, not just right now, it's gonna be a cool knife even into the future, but especially at the price, this is definitely something worth picking up in my opinion, which is why I've actually done so, picked one up myself. Next up, we have another CruWear exclusive, the next variant of the ProTech TR3. We've been enjoying kind of playing with some different handle options on our CruWear blade on this particular model. They've all sold pretty well too, which is awesome. About $240 for this American-made automatic knife, 3 3/8 inch blade drop point. We've got a mid-height flat grind and a full-length swedge there. It's a great blade for everyday carry beyond just the TR in its name, the tactical response. This is just a great usable blade and a very nice, substantial feeling handle for bigger everyday jobs too. Or you can use it tactically too, of course, if you want. But the blue fish scale aluminum handles on this version definitely push it more, I think, towards the fancy or maybe fancy is not the right word, but the
class.
Classy? I don't know about classy is the right word either.
Depends on which class you're in.
You're in a class of your own, Thomas. That's Thomas behind the camera.
Very lonely.
Everybody, yeah, exactly. You're used to it. That's the way you like it anyway.
Yep.
The black accents look really good next to that blue. The blue is nice and vibrant on that aluminum. It's just a really cool look. And of course, it's a ProTech, and you know what that means. The action is also in a class of its own. Really, really, really nice. Check them out right now. All right, next up, we have a new knife that is actually being released today, the day this video posts, and that is the GiantMouse Denim Clyde, a new version. And right off the bat, and right there in the name, that denim Micarta handle looks phenomenal. It may be linen, I'm not sure. I don't think they're actually using like actual blue jean denim, but well, in fact, I know they're not. The weave is far too tight. But the quote-unquote denim Micartas that have been coming out recently are better than ever. You know, some of the denims you used to be able to get, maybe a little bit disappointing, but I love love the newest denim stuff I've been seeing, and this one is no exception. Just check that out. It's got the kind of multiple tonalities that you would expect of like a a stone-washed jean pant, but it has a nice tight weave. It feels really good, looks fantastic, especially when you combine it with the kind of gold accenting colors, back spacer and thumb stud on this particular knife. Very, very awesome. We've also got a wire pocket clip on this knife. Fits in the hand pretty nicely. It's kind of a nice, nimble, easy to control handle design. The blade itself is 3 inches long, and we've got 20 CV blade steel on this. Previous Micarta versions of this, I remember Elmax steel being an option, so this is a new, different option, and an American-made steel on this particular knife as well. Price on it, $175, launching today. It's very cool. I hope they do more with this quote-unquote denim material, because it is a fantastic look. So that's a couple of blue knives in a row, so let's do some more. It's Blue Christmas without you, after all, as they say. Latest Jack Wolf knife coming out tomorrow. This is the Venom Jack. This right here is one of the camo carbon inlay options. Camo carbon is sort of a new entry, an American-made alternative to the fat carbon material, which is made somewhere in Europe, if I'm remembering correctly. Can't remember the exact country, but Europe, anyway. Very, very cool knives here. Price on them for the carbon versions, which there are 3 options right now, about $300. And we've got a natural and a green micarta option. Those are about $275 right now. If you've seen me show any Jack Wolf blades on this channel before, you know exactly what to expect here. They haven't changed up the game in terms of how they're made, which is to say, fantastically. It's just a new shape going on. 3-inch blade, just over 3 inches actually, with this Wharncliffe shape, M390 steel, full height, flat grind, very thin, very sharp edges. That is going to be fantastic as a daily utility style of knife. You're going to be able to use that tip very effectively, whether you're dragging it or even using it for some piercing stuff. And then it's got that full straight edge for just a nice muscly cut when you really need to go after it. The handles are titanium with integral bolsters, and then of course the inlays on each side. Pinned construction, so technically you can adjust or take it apart, but you probably aren't going to have to, because everything on these Jack Wolves is super smooth, super nice. Perfect matchup there on the finish of the spine. The snappiness to the closing and opening action, for that matter, on these knives is resounding. Here, let's just appreciate that opening sound one more time. Very, very, very good. And if the knife itself wasn't enough for you, you're buying the knife. You're not buying the packaging, but the packaging is pretty cool as well. They've got their aluminum tubes, same stuff that you probably know what to expect by now, including the Pog right there, as well as a small leather pocket slip and a microfiber cleaning cloth and a sticker in there too, which is very nice. And it definitely creates a cool presentation. And if you've got a Jack Wolf collection going on, these are going to look fantastic on the shelf as well. All right, some more blueness. We have actually 3 different versions of this knife in stock right now, or at least while we're filming this, they are in stock. The Brian Brown Knives Raptor V2. Very cool. Price on this one about $355, and that comes with the blue accents on the titanium handle, as well as the blue thumb studs. And we've got a couple other color versions that are a few bucks more expensive than this one, but starting out at right around that right at that $355 mark right now. Blade length 3.5 inches, M390 steel. We'll call that a harpoon clip point, I would say, because you've got it's almost, maybe it's just a clip point. It's not quite harpoony enough. In a way, the spine of that blade reminds me a bit of the old MacV SOG buoys, in fact. Kind of a cool look indeed. As far as the action goes, we have ball bearings in the pivot. No flipper tab, just thumb studs, so you gotta be careful, make sure you don't put pressure on the lock bar when you go to open, but nice snappy action. Now the construction of these knives are, dare I say it, pretty darn flawless. I can't see anything or find anything just that's out of place, really. yeah, just fantastic. Based on the finishes, it looks to be a Riot-made knife. We'll confirm that. Basically, if you're hearing this bit of audio where I say the name Riot in the video, that means that it is true. Because if it's not, we'll just cut this part out. But if you know what Riot-made stuff is like, you know that it is absolutely world-class. Nothing to complain about whatsoever. Just phenomenal. And there you go. A couple different versions of it. They have a bit of a narrow handle, or we'll call it a narrow handle as opposed to a skinny handle. It's whatever. Call it whatever you like. But so it's not so much of a kind of like hand filling grip. The kind of gorilla grip for me doesn't feel superb, although choked back just a little bit so the blade kicks down. It works a little bit better. This is more about high class EDC. Should we call it a gents knife? Maybe. It might be a little bit of an aggressive profile, but I don't know. Depends on what kind of gentleman you are, after all. All right, next up, a couple of more blue items, and the first one is one I've really been waiting with bated breath, shall we say, to show up. Baited. It's the Aqualore water fishing bait. Anyway, we saw this back in January at SHOT Show, and it has finally landed. That is the Condor Aqualore, which is a new variant of the Bushlore series, but stainless. If you've been waiting for that, you've got it here. About $97 right now. 4.3-inch blade, Sandvik's 14C28N stainless steel. I love this stuff. I really do. It's one of my favorite stainless, or it's in the family of my favorite non-powder metal stainlesses out there. You know, the Sandvik's, the AEBL, that sort of thing. They all sit in a similar range. 13C26 is a copy of AEBL, and 14C28 is a slight variation on 13C26, and Nitro V is in there somewhere, and it's all good.
Leads.
Can I cut them down today?
Yeah, you have to.
Awesome. Suffice it to say, it is a steel I am very fond of, and one of the nice things about it, and one of the reasons I like it very much, is it has a very high degree of toughness, thanks to its fine grain structure, which makes it a great option for a Scandi ground knife, since the actual sharpened point, the actual apex of a Scandi ground edge is narrower than, you know, a knife with a secondary bevel, which we'll look at here in a second, of course. So that extra toughness is going to help it resist, you know, bending and chipping out the way some more brittle steels, or shall I say less tough steels, can at a Scandi edge. Great choice for this, and of course you've got stainless capabilities too. Backed up, we have blue Micarta handles. They're not calling it denim, which in a way is kind of funny to think about. This actually looks more like denim than the Denim Clyde, and yet if I want denim Micarta, I want what's on that Denim Clyde. That's funny. No matter. It's just an aside. Solid knife to begin with. The materials here just change it up a little bit. I believe they discontinued the Micarta version of the Bushlore specifically, so that's another cool reason to be excited about this being back, or this being out now, because you now have a Micarta option available again with this blade shape. Awesome bushcraft blade, does all of that stuff you want. It kind of just hits all the right notes, and it's been one of Condor's best sellers as a result. Pulled the wrong sheath there. You also get, for that upgraded price, a Kydex sheath, which is going to cost a little more, of course, than the leather sheath of the standard models. But it still comes in under that $100 mark, which is also appreciated. Very cool. As far as the sheath itself, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, there we go. You do have that snap strap right there, so you can easily carry it cross draw if you like. You can just simply kind of ignore this flap right here, or even remove it, as you can see. So that way you've got the standard up and down belt carry option, or included right there, you've got a horizontal cross draw style of sheath option. And I believe, just to see if it's got the full range of versatility, are we Tech-Lock compatible? No, we're not. That's okay. At least they give you the options for a couple of different mounting orientations right out of the box. Next, we have the latest in the Sport Zero. That's X.E.R.O with periods. This is the Chief from Condor, 105 for it. Also, Sandvik's 14C28N steel, a little bit of a bigger blade, 4.7 inches, and those blue micarta handles bolted on in this case rather than pinned and epoxied. Really cool blade. I remember really liking the drop point version of this blade when it came out, and then when it was unveiled at SHOT last year. This one kind of flew under my radar, but I am digging this modified sheep's foot you've got here. This would be a great camp food prep knife, I think. If you're using it for big long slices, you've got just enough belly there to pull those things off. The almost full flat grind and the thin enough blade stock there. It looks about 330 seconds of
Fractions.
330. Hang on. Let me see if we have a measurement on here. 0.12. That's not a full 1/8 of an inch, is it? Maybe it's getting close to it. Anyway, it feels narrower in a way. But that is going to be a really cool slicing knife. Part of me wants to say that wouldn't even be a bad, game processing knife a little bit. Doesn't have a ton of belly, but at least out near the tip, but you've got just this long sweep of edge that if in skilled hands that know what they're doing, could really make that work. That's a cool knife. Yeah, I'm really gravitating towards that. I think camp food prep especially, that has some really cool applications, and then just around the house utility. As far as the sheath here, it is also Kydex. You have a strap or a snap here on the front, which helps secure this whole bit. In other words, you're able to remove it if you like, but we have a secondary retention strap for the handle. We have a standard belt loop, and you have MOLLE compatibility thanks to the design there. Very versatile, lot of good stuff going on right there. And the other thing you have here, since you do have this slot here, it's gonna be real easy to use something like a tech lock if you wish. One last thing to mention, both of these Condors do have a spine that feels crispy enough to strike a fire steel if you're using it for that. But additionally, you do have this little notch in the spine on this Sport Zero knife right here, which, while it's not perfectly shaped for anything that I'm aware of, you are going to get a couple extra, sharp points essentially there that you will be able to even get better purchase on your ferro rod with. Next up, we've been fortunate to have gotten a good batch of a lot of work tough gear fixed blades recently. And this week, we're continuing that with a new batch of the Nomad camp knife, which is a very cool knife. It's actually the first knife we carried of work tough here at the KnifeCenter. It's a Zeke Minacho design. 3 new versions right now this one has Micarta handles. We've got a couple G10 options, and it's a little smoother. It doesn't have the deep ridges of the ones we had carried previously, but you still have plenty of grip with these knives. Nothing to worry about there. Obviously, this is going to be a heavy chopper of choice, 1/4 inch thick and a nice broad blade there. You're able to get a lot of power out of it. The tip can be used for piercing, and when choked up, the blade does surprisingly kind of balance out fairly well. The tip feels nimble enough. It doesn't feel super unwieldy to use that tip, and that's a bit of a surprise. I can say this from experience because I have used one of those previous versions of this knife, and these are the observations I've found to be true in any case. Really cool. Your fine work as a result of that balance is going to be able to be pulled off thanks to the size of the finger choil and the relationship of the edge itself. Speaking of the edge itself, in typical work tough fashion, it is convexed and highly polished. It is a fantastic edge right out of the box. What else do I like about this knife? You have a forward lanyard, which is my preferred, or a forward lanyard point, which is my preferred point for a heavy chopper. Stick your hand down through the loop and then grab the handle. So if your hands do slip while you're chopping, it just kind of stays right where it is. Very, very safe. At least I've found it to be so for my uses. Very cool. Last but not least, the steel. K340, which is an upgrade from the SK5 or SK85 of the previous versions. This is not a powder steel, but it is a electroslag remelted process that creates the steel. Think of it kind of as somewhere in between a true powder metal process and a standard ingot steel. But that's all gobbledygook. The moral or the end result is with this steel versus the SK85, you're going to be getting more toughness and more edge retention out of it. Never a bad thing, don't you think? As for the sheath, it is Kydex. It is built very well. Resounding snap for sure. Comes with a Tech-Lock style attachment. Comes with a fire steel as well as there's a patch and a cleaning cloth in there. It really is a very compelling package overall. Price on these right now comes in about $280. So one thing you can always say about a Work Tuff knife is they've got a lot of attitude, right? In a good way. This next knife is exactly the same, and it's a very holiday appropriate knife. This is the Microtech Signature Series Zombie Tech OTF. Cool. Zombie Tech there, right on the back. And it's green and red. That's Christmas colors, folks.
Obviously.
You know, this could be what you carry. There's that new movie out, Violent Night, with that guy who looks like me in it.
The guy? Yeah.
Yeah. So.
That's not you?
But you could carry this knife to the showings, if you will. Be great opening presents as well. Actually would look nice as an ornament, don't you think? Put a little hook on there and have that hanging down.
That's what it's for.
That might be what it's for. $365 for these knives. You got your 3.5-inch blade. Tonto profile here with that stone-washed finish with satin flats. It is a Microtech, so it's got industry-leading action. It's got that aggressive thumb ramp, so you're always going to be able to get the traction you need. Reversible clip on the tail end right there with the glass breaker point, or it's not really a point. It's the ball bearing there at the back. It's cool. And it's holiday appropriate. You guys. No comment?
No.
No, good. Oh man, very cool knife, very cool knife. Next up, we have the Finch Knife Company CHERNOBYL ANT. A few new versions of this knife right here. This is the Raffir Noble. Sorry, no, it's not a Raffir Noble. Actually, it's a glow Raffir resin handle. So I haven't tested out the glow on this actually, but it should glow. Shall we? Hang on. Wrong side for the flashlight. We just wait here while.
Yeah.
Hey, you can just barely see it a little bit. It got a little green on you. And of course the Finch shield on these typically glows green as well. That is cool. And it's a cool, usable blade apart from that. $129 for them. That Raffir handle material usually carries a bit of a premium, and that's no exception here. 3-inch blade, 14C28N as well. I've already talked about why I like that stuff. Nice horizontal grain, liner lock back on the handle. You don't, with this, you don't get like the bolstered look that a lot of their knives have that kind of pull that horizontal grain back towards the handle. Instead, you get the Raffir in this case. That's a cool shape. The flipper works quite well. There's ball bearings in the pivot, of course. Yeah, just like every good Finch out there, this kind of channels the spirit of old slip joints into a more modern flipping locking knife. Check that out, very cool. All right, we've got some more Raffir to take a look at, and we've got a lot of Kizer to take a look at. We've looked at maybe like half the knives here, and the other half on the table are Kizers right now. So let's talk about the first, Mini Sheepdog with a Raffir Noble handle, non-glow in the dark. $178 for this knife right here. And this is the non-flipper tabbed version of the Sheepdog series, which has been gaining some traction lately. And initially I was a little bit skeptical, but I'm really kind of opening up to these thumb stud versions. They work really well, reverse flick really well, and you don't have the flipper tab, which was admittedly a little bit large on those original knives to get in the way, making this even better for use on a surface, whether it's cutting board work, not that I would food prep with a small knife like this, but scoring through stuff, cutting through craft projects, you know, leather on a cutting mat, that sort of thing. You're gonna have an easier time with this lack of a flipper tab. It's really cool. Milled pocket clip on this knife. It's a 3-finger grip, but it still feels secure thanks to its overall shape. Got some contouring going on, some ridges there on the side for some traction, whether on your thumb like this if you're pinch gripping, or whether you're gorilla gripping and your index fingers get around the side. Very nice. The cool thing about the small too is honestly the size of the blade. Like I said, 2.6 inches, but you're able to get right out towards that little cutout, that little notch on the front of the blade there. with your index finger, and you can pull off some really precise, very controlled stuff with that tip. So there's actually three sizes of the Sheepdog. This is the mini, you've got the standard, and you've also got the XL, in which we have a new entry this week. And the XL Sheepdog has always been just a monster. It's not the tankiest knife out there in terms of the big knives. It still actually slices really well, but despite not being the quote-unquote tankiest of the big knives out there, it still creates an outsized impression. I mean, it is truly jaw-dropping when you extract this knife from your pocket and start to put it to use. The best part about this one, this is one of the quote-unquote Vanguard versions, which means it's more affordably priced. $99 right now, 154 cm for the blade steel rather than S35, to explain the price difference right there. I mean, just massive. I mean, good luck fitting anything else in your front pocket next to that. This thing is so cool. Said, nearly a 4-inch blade. Reverse flicks well, flicks, or thumb flicks, I'm sure pretty well. Gosh, fills the hand exceptionally, and yet it still slices pretty darn well, thanks to the relative thinness of the blade relative to its overall size. The flat grind, which is about 2/3 height, shall we say. Just superb. Man, for a large, like truly large knife that can still cut with aplomb, you can do a lot worse than that knife for sure. All right, next we have a new version of the Kizer Lieb, the Lieb M. It's a little bit larger than the original, and it comes fitted with a button lock mechanism as opposed to the liner lock. $80 for this knife right here. 3-inch blade, 154 cm, burlap micarta for the handles. This is, I'd say, one of those small but mighty blades, which I always, internally at least in my head, describe as something with a blade no longer than 3 inches, yet still with a full-sized grip for heavier feeling work. And this knife definitely has it. The burlap micarta there is thick enough that you have that full grip, and it's rounded over very nicely off the edges. Actually even has maybe just a hint of contouring to it. It's a little hard to tell for sure. Yeah, there's a little bit going on there, and it just feels absolutely phenomenal. The pocket clip stays nice and out of the way. It is reversible, left or right, and deep carry, which makes this a very ambidextrous knife because even though the button lock is right hand facing, it is very usable for the left hand. Gosh, that's so nice. Thin blade, full flat grind, very useful shape. You've got, we'll call that a modified sheep's foot. The angle of the blade the angle of the edge allows you to do stuff like this. Going to be another great knife for working on a surface, scoring or cutting through onto a board underneath. Very, very nice. Has some good power feeling to the cut. Man, I'm really liking this, you guys. Thomas, what do you think?
Dig it.
It's high praise, indeed, coming from the man behind the camera over there. Yeah, I don't know. I was throwing to Thomas because I'm running out of things to say. It just feels good, and I can't tell you exactly why, but this is one of those ones that just, I guess, feels more than the sum of its parts, shall we say?
Would you say you dig it?
I dig it. Thank you for your help, Thomas. It's much appreciated.
That's what I'm here for.
Couple versions of this right now. We also have a green micarta with a non-blackened blade, if you prefer that kind of look. That's just awesome. The original, of course, has a 2.4-inch blade in the liner lock, and that was always a really cool knife too. So I'm happy to see them doing more with the platform. That's nice. All right, next up, more Kizers, as promised. This is the original. That's the name of the knife. So it's the Kizer Cutlery Vanguard Original Button Lock. This is one of the more affordable originals that are in stock right now. We also have some more premium ones. I will mention in a minute. I don't have one on the table. But this is another kind of perfectly sized everyday carry knife. And I guess perfectly sized might be strong, but what I mean is we've got a 3-inch blade here, so you can take it just about anywhere. Know your local laws before taking that advice, of course. And it's a perfect do everything blade shape for an everyday carry, just pocket knife would need to pull off. $72, 154 cm steel, nearly a full flat grind on that drop point blade. Right here it says original tuxedo because it's the black and white G10. Tuxedo usually implies a little more, something a little classier feeling to me. This doesn't necessarily feel classy, even though it does look good. As far as the grip, if you're back here in the index finger section, for me, it's kind of a 3.5 finger grip, but much like something like the Ontario Rat, you've got not a choil, but a flat section here on the handle leading into the small sharpening choil on the blade that gives you a good flat spot for choking up. So you can still get, or I can still get anyway, kind of a gorilla grip on that knife without sliding up onto the edge unsafely. Pretty nice. Does the wrist flick perfectly well. No flipper tab, just thumb studs here, and it does that fantastically as well. Button locks like this tend to work well for lefties, but the deep carry clip on this knife is not reversible, unfortunately, so keep that in mind if you're looking at something like this. Also on the more affordable spectrum of the original series, which, like I said, some of the fancier ones are getting close to 200 bucks, but you can also, for about $82, get a Micarta handled version if you don't like the aggressive black and white of this one. Next, we have a Dirk Pinkerton design and the second release from Kizer to feature their clutch lock, which is their version of the crossbar lock, which also includes 5 different holes in the liner behind the lock on each side, so that the end user can go in and adjust to your preferred spring tension by choosing which hole you like. Like I said, I've never, well, I mentioned this in the video earlier this week with the drop bear. I've never taken it apart to see where they have the spring placed out of the box, but I feel no need to because it is, can you tell? Satisfying as all get out. This follows this knife follows a similar playbook to the drop bear in that it has an aluminum handle, front and back. The blade steel gets an upgrade though. S35 VN at 3.3 inches long, and the price about $171 for this knife. It's got plenty of handle girth there. Definitely has a full-sized knife feeling. The blade, very nice. Just above a saber height flat grind, and you've got the twin fullers there, front and back. Stone-washed finish on the blade is going to wear nicely over time as well. Let's see, I haven't seen, well, I was just about to say I was going to see if I can reverse flick it with the fullers there, but they kind of bury into the handle a little too much for me to access it, but you could probably do it with the thumb stud. Yeah, no problem. Part of the thing that goes into explaining the action of these is it's a little different than a lot of other crossbar locks out there in that it uses ball bearings in the pivot as opposed to a brass washer. So you've got a bit more of a kind of free-floating feel to its action as opposed to, well, she'll compare it to the Presidio in my pocket. You still have a free-floating feel, but it's not like there's something, it's a little bit different than the other brass washer-based crossbar locks out there. But no matter how they achieve it, it's just great. This knife has the features you want if you liked the drop bear but wanted something a little bit larger. You've still got a deep carry pocket clip, which is reversible. And I think at least 2 versions of this knife right now, which can be had. Speaking of the drop bear, we have the other new high-end version. I showed one earlier this week in the best folding knives of 2020, best new folders of 2020. Did it again. It's the newest pocket knives of 2020 because there is an OTF on that list.
It's also 2022.
It is 2022, isn't it?
All the twos.
All of the 222s. This knife and the next several are what Kizer are in sort of a loose collection that Kizer is calling the Fatbulous series because they all feature fat carbon handle scales. So I won't go too in depth on all of these, but we'll hit the high points. This one right here, 3-inch blade, 20 CV on this version of the drop bear for $198. There's also a blue fat carbon with stone-washed Elmax steel for about 20 bucks more than that. The action is so good. The clip on this is also milled, so you have a nice soft spot here, or a nice rounded over spot where your fingers are going to be going over it. That is a nice detail. and you got a full grip on this 3-inch blade as well. Another small but mighty folder. There are Fatbulous versions of the original that we looked at earlier. There's also the HIC-CUP with a dark matter copper fat carbon handle, and this is the non-flipper version. This is the thumb hole only version, which also works as a front flipper. So technically, I guess it's still a flipper. 168 for this S35 VN steel stonewashed finish, 3 1/8 inch on the blade. And you've got that distinctive saber height flat ground profile on the blade there. Also the Cormorant, one of their surprise kind of runaway hits as well. This has the Nebula fat carbon, 210 for this with an L-Max steel blade and that blackened stonewashed finish. You've got the button lock that lets you wrist flick. You've got the thumb hold that lets you do other stuff. You got the front or reverse flipper and, or shall we say standard flipper, and the front flipper on this. Basically all of the opening moves you can think of, you can do with this particular knife. Very, very cool design. Milled deep carry pocket clip, check that out. Very cool. And last but not least, from the Fatbulousness is the Begleiter 2 button lock. 190 for this 20 CV blade steel and a 3.4-inch length on that clip point blade. You've got the flip, you've got the flipper, and the flipper and the flicker basically are going on with this very, very nicely. Plenty of handle length. Same milled, softened pocket clip that we saw on the drop bear just a few seconds ago. And this is the Purple Haze fat carbon. And there are others, I think, that didn't even make it onto the table with kind of the fat carbon treatment right now. There was absolutely a ton of new Kizers. We could have done a whole video, like we could have filled this table up with just the Kizer stuff, and I wanted to show you the other new stuff too. One last Kizer to talk out, another Begleiter, the Begleiter fixed blade. 3.77-inch blade, D2 steel, $64 with Micarta handles. That's a pretty compelling package, I gotta say. The handles feel great. You've got that choke up point with the finger choil. Although, can we call it a choil since it doesn't actually intersect the cutting edge? Since you have a actual sharpening choil on it as well? I'm not sure. But this is gonna be just a cool, in my mind, everyday carry utility is gonna be served well. This is gonna be a decent camp knife also, and would be a pretty decent hunting knife too. It's got a small enough size to it to be very manageable, plenty of belly on the end there, full flat grind, so it's gonna slice pretty well. It does have that kind of rough traction style powder coating on it, so it's not gonna be as necessarily quite as efficient through a slice. But since D2 is only a semi-stainless steel, you're gonna have to worry even less about corrosion with that coating on there. I'm really liking this actually. Kizer has really, really done a lot of good things this year. I gotta say, they're really stepping their game up. Not that there was, not that they didn't have good game before, but they're not resting on their laurels. They're doing some cool stuff. Kydex for the sheath. It comes with 2 snap straps here to make horizontal carry ready to go right out of the box. You could, of course, remove these straps, and the top 2 holes here are going to be compatible with the standard tech lock hole spacing too. So if you want to switch things up, that is what you're looking at right there. All right, that is all I've got to show you for now. And make sure you check the shipping options at checkout if you are looking to get any of this stuff by Christmas. If you're watching this on the day or the day after this posts, there's probably just enough wiggle room in there. You could still really get some stuff just in time for Christmas, but make sure you check out those options at checkout. To do that, to get your hands on any of these, check out the links in the description that'll take you over to KnifeCenter.com. And whether you're purchasing something for yourself or for someone else this year, thanks to our Knife Rewards program, you can earn some free money to spend on a future purchase. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. That's Thomas behind the camera. We're signing off. Happy holidays.